The news broke like a thunderclap across the sports world. Caitlin Clark's arrival in the EuroLeague wasn't a rumor anymore. It was official. The league confirmed what insiders had whispered for weeks, and suddenly the basketball landscape shifted. Fans who had watched Clark electrify arenas in America now face a new reality. Her star power would shine on European courts, too. The WNBA, which had built its entire marketing strategy on her shoulders, was thrown into chaos. This wasn't just a player move. It was a declaration of independence, a power play that rattled an entire establishment to its core. From the moment the EuroLeague confirmation dropped, whispers turned into screams. Commentators across social media argued that Clark had finally broken free from the glass ceiling of WNBA salaries. In Europe, she wouldn't just play basketball, she'd collect paychecks dwarfing her rookie deal. Fans remembered Ice Cube's $5 million Big Three offer for fewer than 10 games and realized something sobering. Europe had the money to match. Clark wasn't leaving for adventure. She was leaving because the numbers spoke louder than any league promises ever could. But it wasn't just about money. Clark's WNBA rookie contract felt insulting compared to the talent she brought. Barely over $338,000 total across her rookie years, while her NBA counterpart Victor Wembanyama secured $55 million in the same span. The disparity was grotesque, a public stain on how women's basketball stars are treated. Clark's decision to pursue opportunities overseas wasn't betrayal. It was survival. Her fans understood it, even if the league refused to admit it. The financial mismatch became the spark to a raging firestorm of debate that consumed every basketball conversation. Inside WNBA headquarters, Commissioner Kathy Engelbert and executives scrambled to contain the fallout. Their star attraction, the reason arenas were packed to standing room capacity, was slipping away, at least part-time. Before Clark, games drew modest crowds. With her, even the third balconies filled with people desperate to catch a glimpse of her deep threes. The league's surge in popularity rested almost entirely on her rookie shoulders, and now those shoulders were carrying her across the Atlantic. Engelbert knew this wasn't just bad optics, it was catastrophic. A league finally basking in the spotlight risked being plunged back into irrelevance without its shining centerpiece. The narrative grew darker as critics accused the WNBA of losing its golden goose through arrogance and mismanagement. They leaned into race-baiting controversies, undercutting Clark's accomplishments, and in doing so, alienated the very star breathing life into the league. What looked like incompetence began to resemble sabotage. Fans who once celebrated the league now whispered betrayal, claiming leadership had destroyed their own star. Clark's overseas move looked less like exploration and more like escape. She wasn't abandoning the WNBA. She was fleeing the very structure that should have nurtured her greatness, but instead chose to suffocate it. The EuroLeague, long overlooked in the American sports narrative, suddenly stood center stage. Founded in 1958, it was never just a novelty act or off-season distraction. It was a crown jewel of European women's basketball. Here, Clark would not only compete but thrive against international talent renowned for precision, strategy, and physicality. Unlike the short summer stint of the WNBA, EuroLeague meant October to April battles across Europe's most iconic arenas. Its credibility was undeniable, its intensity unmatched. For Clark, this wasn't a downgrade, it was a battlefield upgrade. Fans began realizing she wasn't stepping sideways, but stepping into something bigger. Her choice wasn't simply about games, it was about brand power. In the WNBA, her highlights went viral. Deep threes, fiery rivalries, explosive crowds. But Europe offered something the WNBA never could, global recognition. Playing internationally would transform her from a domestic phenomenon into a worldwide icon. Paris championships, Turkish clashes, Russian showdowns, moments that would stamp her name across every basketball-loving nation. The move screamed ambition. Clark wasn't satisfied being queen of one castle. She wanted to rule the entire kingdom. Her brand would now live on both sides of the Atlantic, doubling her reach and influence, and perhaps redefining the future of women's basketball itself. Cementing her legend came at a cost. Without Clark anchoring every storyline, the WNBA risked shrinking overnight. Ratings that had soared thanks to her Indiana Fever games were bound to collapse. Before she arrived, televised matches averaged under 400,000 viewers. With her, over 1 million tuned in, sometimes triple that number. Now imagine those numbers evaporating because her time was split. The Fever's games would no longer command the same electricity. The viral highlights wouldn't flood TikTok and Twitter. Rivalries, especially with Angel Reese, would lose their sting. The league's momentum wasn't just threatened, it was already slipping away. Meanwhile, across Europe, teams salivated at the chance to market Caitlin Clark as a superstar. In Spain, fans lined up overnight just for preseason tickets. In Turkey, whispers spread that arenas would shatter attendance record the moment she stepped onto the floor. She wouldn't just be a player. She would be a phenomenon, her presence alone capable of financing an entire club. That kind of demand created a frightening scenario for the WNBA. If European franchises treated Clark like royalty, how could America ever lure her back full-time? The balance of power was shifting overseas. What made Europe even more irresistible was its relentless schedule. From October through April, 6 straight months of competition stood in stark contrast to the WNBA's short May to September stint. For a competitor like Clark, who craved the ball in her hands, this wasn't just appealing, it was addictive. Twice the grind, twice the stage, twice the chance to refine her game. The WNBA felt like checkers. The EuroLeague felt like chess. Clark wasn't chasing comfort. She was chasing conquest. The structure of the European calendar let her live out her basketball obsession without pause, and it terrified WNBA executives watching helplessly. Every step she took overseas expanded her myth. Trips to Paris, Istanbul, Moscow, or Madrid weren't just glamorous. They were transformative. She was no longer simply an American star. She was a global ambassador. Brands lined up, eager to plaster their logos across her jerseys. In airports, fans screamed her name in languages she didn't yet speak. She wasn't just gaining money in games. She was gaining cultural capital, rewriting what it meant to be a women's basketball player. Her journey was no longer just about basketball. It was about revolution. And while Clark rose higher, the WNBA plunged. The league's entire strategy had revolved around her name. Every promo, every broadcast, every highlight reel leaned on her. Now, with her heading abroad, the blueprint lay in tatters. This wasn't simply losing a star, it was losing the heartbeat of an entire marketing plan. Sponsors who once eagerly cut checks for Clark-centered exposure began questioning their return on investment. Networks eyed declining ratings with unease. The WNBA's Clark plan had collapsed, and no backup existed. What passed for strategy now was desperation, not vision. The numbers made it painfully clear. Indiana Fever games averaged 1.18 million viewers, dwarfing the 394,000 average for every other matchup. 19 of the league's 22 most-watched games involved Clark. That wasn't coincidence. It was proof she carried the WNBA on her shoulders. And without her, those numbers would fall off a cliff.